So I am more excited. This is such an interesting thing. But I have so much to say on this topic, and I am more excited, I think, to talk about this than I was to share when I made the million, or when I crossed a million in a year, which is so funny. And I have a lot of thoughts on why that is, which I will share too. But I think one of the main reasons is because, yes, it was so exciting when we made that, and I'm like so proud of that. But this feels so much deeper. This feels so much more true and important. Like, yes, it's really important for women to know, like, you can make great money and like have a life that you love. I think 100% I felt very passionate about sharing that message too. But this one today feels even more important and just feels like it has a little bit more depth to that than that. So I'm really excited to kind of get into this. Hi, Michelle. Oh, fun. Christmas shopping. That's such a lazy thing to say. I'm not sure which thing that is. I'm scared to ask. Today is the last day to buy gifts for arrival for Christmas for most places. Oh, shit, really? Ends live and goes Christmas shopping instead. But yeah, because that's not ideal. But thank you for that PSA, Michelle, because I need to know this. Yes, Katie, I think totally your language. So I have so much to say. The first thing I want to say, well, so I guess, I mean, obviously the title implies it. But oh, that I'm more excited to talk about this than making the million. Okay, good. Garrett, like, okay, that's true. Good point, Michelle. Good point. Okay, so we didn't make $1 million this year. And I put gasp in the title because I feel like that's such a thing where it's like, like nobody's sharing that part. Like, it's almost like, oh, you didn't? Oh my God, how terrible. Why would you say that kind of thing? And I know most people here are not thinking that, but I think that's very much like the vibe in our space. And so I just wanted to like put it there to like poke fun at the fact that like that would be a big deal, or that should even be a big deal. So yeah, we didn't. We got pretty close to it, which I'm pretty proud of. I actually should have pulled the exact number before I jumped on, but I forgot and didn't have time. I think I'm honestly guesstimating, guys, but I think we're in the 700s, right? So like we're quite close considering I took off 4 months this year. Obviously, if I had worked a full year, we would have been over it. But you know, I think we're close. Like, I think making over 700K, again, I don't know the exact number. I'm sure there's, you know, like wiggle room in that. Like, I'm definitely not saying I'm committed to that. I think it was over that, but I would rather undershoot than overshoot. But I also took off 4 months this year, and I'm going to share a lot more about that context. You could literally hear me gasp. That's so funny. I love that. I'm going to share more about the context of that. But the one thing that I really want to say before I share too much more about that is that it is really important for me to say that, one, I think this is such an important conversation because I think it's about owning our wins for sure, but also deciding what they mean for us, but also not being controlled or owned by them. So we're going to talk about that a lot. Then the second thing that feels really important for me to say is that I will share context of like this year and what happened, because that's part of this live and this story and this thing we're doing. But none of that, so important, none of that is an excuse or an apology. Like, I feel 0 bit apologetic about not making $1 million this year. So I'm going to share context because I think it's helpful and important. And like, it is not even close to an apology or a reason or an excuse for why this didn't happen. It just didn't happen, period. And like, I don't feel bad about that in any way, shape, or form. So I think it's just like really important to say that and to not create this energy that we're supposed to apologize for that as women or business owners or any of those things. Lisa was like, yes, didn't you take 4 months off though? Exactly. Yes, I did. So the first thing I think is interesting, which I'm sure would be a question if I was listening, so I'll just answer it, which is like, will you still call yourself like a 7-figure business owner? And I've thought about this like extensively. mostly just because I like to think these things through, not in like a, like, oh my God, I've been, thinking about this a lot, but I like to weigh the, like, where's the line of integrity? What feels true? What doesn't feel true? And what I've come to is that, like, yes, I 100% will still call myself that for lots of reasons. But a couple that I feel like are really important to share. One is that I feel like, there's so many different, like, iterations of this going around the online space, but like some people are saying like, oh, I'm a 7-figure business owner if they've just made $1 million lifetime value in their business. That's totally cool. Like, you do you. That's not how I was saying it. I was saying it as in, I made $1 million cash, not sales, in a 12-month period. Some people say it when they've made $1 million in sales. Like, again, it doesn't really matter, but I think there's like a lot of nuance to it. But for me, what's true is, like, or when I was saying it, what was true is like, we made $1 million in cash in a year. But what's also true is I've been in business for 7 years, and I think we've made, again, I didn't pull exact numbers, which is my fault, but I think we've made between $4 and $5 million total in that time. So it does not feel disingenuous for me to like own being a 7-figure business. And again, we've also done it before. Also, I actually would have made that this year, but I took 4 months off, right? So like, 3 were like completely off. 1 was like incredibly part-time, but I even pulled back on that because I had family stuff going on, which I will talk about too. Obviously, we lost my dad this year. So basically I had 4 months off. So we had the 100K month this year. We had the 0K month this year. Like, those balance each other out. But if you take the months that we were like earning money, of course, we're like way trending and would have surpassed $1 million. But I took a literal quarter of the year off. So we didn't. So again, I still feel in integrity owning that because the months I was actively working were on track for that. And then the last thing is, like, personally, I don't care all that much to call myself a 7-figure business owner. I mean, I do it because I feel like that ownership is important, but I don't actually feel like my worth or value as a coach is tied to that. And I honestly don't think any of my clients are hiring me because I made that much money. Like, a lot of my clients make more money than I do. I don't really think they give a shit. But to me, this is like the truest reason is because the idea that I'd have to not use that title because I took time off for maternity leave feels like a slap in the fucking face to like women everywhere. And I'm not going to do that. Like, the idea that like I would have to like not own that because I took 4 months off to birth a child and like be a mom, feels so special and feels like to feel like I had to somehow make that wrong or like make an apology for that or not use, that just felt so not the message and not the purpose. So I think what's really important is that I share context for that, right? Like, I want to be here. I want to be honest. I want to tell you what it means when I say that. And I just cannot get bought into the idea that I should have to change anything or make any apology because that was my path this year, And I think I've talked about this a lot, but I think our industry is so like damaging and insidious with this to a certain extent, because like, yes, there's a belief that like you can make great money as a mom and business owner. And I think that's amazing and important. But I think the idea that that will never, ever impact your business or shouldn't ever impact your business or you're not a good business owner is also just as deeply damaging. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's like, yes, it's so great to be like, hey, you don't have to like get screwed because you're like a working mom. And like to assume that there should never be any impact there, I think is also really not useful. So anyway, all that to be said, yes, is my answer there, but with context, but with clarity, but with this ownership. And I think that's all we can ask of anyone in the online space. Like, by all means, own your wins, share your numbers, and do it with context and clarity. You know what I mean? I think that's so important. Hi, Lisa. I love that you said that. Yes, so true. Michelle said that would be such a hot live. My 0K month as a 7-figure business owner. Okay, coming at you, Michelle. But yeah, it's true. I mean, like, literally, we had a 0K month this year. Like, let's normalize and own that like that can happen even when you're far along. Obviously, a lot of that was based on decisions I made to like not put other things in place and to just totally take that time off. But I did, and I own and stand by those decisions. Okay, so the context. The second thing I was going to share, and again, like none of this is like an apology, but it feels important to say, is this was by far, the most intense year of my life, like by just such a long shot. And listen, I recognize that the most intense year of my life is still an incredibly privileged year. And I'm sure compared to many other people's, looks and feels different. And so there's like recognition there. And the truth is that for me, I've never had like more intensity in such a short period of time. I'll share just a little bit of it, mostly just for my own processing, because sometimes I'm just like, what the fuck happened this year? But I lost my dog, which was like, you know, I know for some might feel like a big deal, for others might not. For me, it was like quite a big thing. My dad was diagnosed with brain cancer. We went through surgery, brain surgery, multiple hospitalizations. And that was, you know, obviously very mentally and emotionally and challenging in all the ways, but it was also quite demanding in the sense that I am an only child. And I live very close to my parents. And so the kind of like physical component of like being there and present for all of this was also like incredibly demanding. I wouldn't change any of it, but like the reality is it was. And then I also was like very pregnant for most of that, had a baby. I took the 4 months off, like we were talking about. In that time, we lost my dad, which was obviously like an incredibly difficult thing to process. Then I went back to work, which like, you know, again, going back to work when have just had such a tremendous loss. And then also, like our new mom is quite intense in general. Gosh, then what else happened? You know, we moved homes. You guys heard about that. Obviously that was a beautiful thing, but like very intense thing on top of everything else. We completed that 1.5 year long lawsuit that we had against the owners of our previous rental property. And I launched a second business, right? Like, what the F, you know, it was just so much and so intense. And so what really is the truest truth is that what needed my attention this year was my life and not my money. And I just cannot say that enough, is that like, that is okay. It is okay if you have a season in your business where your life needs your attention more than your money. And I think that like, that shouldn't feel revolutionary to say, and yet it does. Because I feel like there is I am all about women sharing like money wins. I have no thing about that. In fact, I like very much believe in that, honestly. I know there's like a lot of, you know, polarity around that in our industry. I totally believe in sharing money wins, but I really think that there comes to the point in our industry where it seems like, why else would you focus on anything else? Like if you're not focusing on the money, you're missing the point. And like that, I cannot. Like, no. And I don't think it has to be life or money all the time. But for me, this year was just full on. Oh, I love you, Jess. Crying, bye. Oh, thank you. Yes, to that. It feels so good to hear that. So good. So yeah, like it's not to say you can't have life and money, but this year, like my life stuff was just super full on. And so it did feel like that needed my attention way more than my money, where I've had plenty of seasons in business where I could give, you know, the money and the growth more attention. And that was good too. That like neither are bad, but I think the idea that one is better is really tough. I think there is such a, kind of like toxic narrative in our space that like the belief being that if you're not making more money, there is something in you that's wrong. Like there's a block, there's a thing, there's inner work you're not doing. And I just like so fully believe in mindset work and the inner work. And I think it is everything. And I think the idea that if you're not like swimming in cash, that it means you're not doing it is also wrong. Like, do you know what I mean? I guess that's like kind of always what I'm saying is like, when we're so far on one side or the other, I think we're typically getting it wrong, and both is true. Like, there is a time to look at the stuff that's keeping you stuck. And if you have a year where the other stuff gets your attention, like there is nothing wrong with you. You know what I mean? Like, does money help you? Or is money like a catalyst even to look at your own stuff and grow? Absolutely. Is it the only reflection of your internal peace and serenity and confidence, etc.? No, it is fucking not, right? I'm super curious. Obviously, only if you feel like sharing, but did you get some sort of coaching support to help you process during that year? I had therapy, honestly. Elisa, I did the um the oh my God, what's it called? Hospice. That was my dad was and they offered therapy, which was great. And then I have been personally working with a grief therapist myself since then. So yeah, that felt, I'm a big fan of like coaching and therapy combined, but like this definitely felt like more of a thing for therapy than coaching personally. I think that there's always like a race based right thing, but for me, in terms of like the amount of grief I was feeling and some of the like trauma from stuff with my dad and things like that, like it really was right for a therapy container, not a coaching container. But yeah, I've been doing the thing there. Not that you're asking in a bad way. I'm just, for me, I'm saying like, oh, I feel like I've been doing the thing there. But yeah, like you have to have that support, like the like. And what's interesting to say about that too is like, I also got therapy because I wasn't really trying to grow the business this year. You know what I mean? It wasn't like the right fit for like a coaching container because I like growth wasn't the thing, you know? But yes, like 1000% please get yourself supported, because I could absolutely not have done that without that. Like absolutely not. Ariel says, love this. It's both. You're so welcome. Thanks, Katrina. Yes. So sick of money being the only gauge for success. Exactly. I think it is a gauge. It is not the gauge. You know what I mean? And that's what's so important to keep sharing here is like, yes, like money can show you like so much and it can teach you so much and it can be such a good reflection of things that are coming up for you. But I think like where we take that too far in our industry is the idea that like if you ever have a time where you like step back or make less or whatever, that there is something wrong with you because the money isn't the only thing that's reflecting that. Like that part is just so challenging for me in this space because I just think that it completely wipes out like the human elements. And I think that it just puts money on such a pedestal. And like, listen, we're all in business and the conversations we're having are about how to make more money. So like, full stop, get that. And we'll keep having those conversations. But I think that without some level of nuance to them, we're sort of missing the point a little bit. For me, like what my experience of this year is that I felt so grateful that I had leaned into the business in the seasons where I was able to do that so that I could lean out in the season where I needed to. And that to me is like the ultimate goal and the most beautiful epic balance is that we will go through different seasons and we will need different things from our life and our business in different seasons. And like building the thing that moves with that is what I feel like is like the ultimate, dream for me anyway, because like that to me is freedom. It's not like, it's so funny because I've actually thought about this and, maybe this was self-created to a certain extent. I'm sure that could be possible too, but like, I almost feel so happy that I can end the year being like, I went through all that and like, we didn't hit the million, because I almost feel like if I had said I went through all that and we did, like, that is not exactly the message I would want to share, to be perfectly honest. Am I really, really proud of like my strength and resilience this year? I really am. Like, I deeply see and honor myself for that. But like, I don't love that at all costs kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Like I wasn't willing to do it at all costs. I've never been willing to do it at all costs. I think you guys know that about me, but like I think that would have been I would have found myself in a really challenging position had I been ending this year having to share the message of like, we still made $1 million and I went through all this again, like, yay for my resilience, but also like that should not be the thing. Do you know what I mean? So in some ways, I feel like this happened exactly as it was supposed to happen and probably happened most in alignment with my truest desire and truest message here. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, I think that, the takeaway that I really want to give to everyone is like, you can have different seasons of life and of business. And like, especially like I've had this business for 7 years, I was married when I started it. I got divorced. I was single for a while. I was dating. I met Kenny. I like got married, had a baby. Like there have been so many versions of Lacey in this business and versions of my life in this business. Of course, I'm going to need to pull different things and show up in different ways at different times. It would be insane to think that I wouldn't go through all of that and need that, I think you could share that. Yes, I think the fear for so many is that if we take what we need, we will take from our business, which is so damaging. Oh my gosh, so much to say about that. Yes, Jess. Ariel says, love you so much. Just want to really call out that you went through all of this and somehow were able to hold space for all your clients. Oh, thank you. So grateful you're having this conversation. I love how you talk about things no one seems to want to discuss. Thank you, Jordan. I feel like that is my jam. Hey, Allie. But yeah, like I also have many clients that have gone through the business owner to motherhood transition when they've been further along in their businesses. And there's just always so much fear around like, oh my God, but what if this year my business doesn't make X? What if, and I'm like, I feel like my constant, I'm sure if you're one of my clients and I've said this to you, you're probably like, I know. But my constant thing I'm always saying is like, and you had a baby, and you had a baby, and you just had a baby this year. And I'm sure at some point they're like, okay, I fucking get it. But like, hello, like that is like the biggest life transition many of us will go through. And so I think, just this idea that we're not like that we're making that seem like you have to show me how you can do that and not sacrifice anything or not have a trade-off or never seem like, anything happen. Like that part to me is like, oh my God, what are we doing to women? Like I think it's so interesting because I feel like obviously we're in such a fortunate place as women where like we can like go out and start the businesses and do the things. Like there's been so much growth in that, but I think like now we've reached kind of the other side of that where now there's so much expected where it's like do all of that and be mothers and birth the children and never ever make it look like you did any of that. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, as much as it, I feel like our industry would seem like it would stand against that. I think it really takes a stand for that a little too much sometimes. And I think that, that is our opportunity. And that's just a conversation I want to have. Like the best business to me is the one that follows me through those seasons. It's not the one that looks like it never, ever, ever, ever doesn't make $1 million. Like, who the fuck cares? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's so funny. Like, and truly, and I'm saying this definitely from a very privileged place, but I also think it's important to hear is that my life changes zero if I made in the 700s this year, if I made $1 million cash. Like literally my life changes zero. And honestly, I probably profited even more this year and like saved money on taxes, like it, not literally nothing about my life will change because of that. But my life would have changed drastically last year if I spent all that time obsessing about how I was going to make $1 million this year. My life would have been fucked last year, right? I'm saying last year, like we're already in 2023. I feel like I've like mentally left this year behind. I'm like, bye, I'm done with you. But like that, I cannot imagine how incredibly stressed out I would have been last year dealing with all that with my dad, having been at all of those things if the narrative in the back of my head was like, no one will hire you because you didn't you're not going to make a million this year. Everyone's going to think you suck. You're not actually a good business coach because of that. Like, fuck that, you guys, right? Like, that was enough to go through. I didn't need that on top of it. And I really want everyone that's listening to like think about like what stories and bullshit are you telling yourself that you don't need on top of what you're already dealing with, you know? Like, so important to recognize that and realize that like so often like the amount of money that you know it's going to be the difference maker there won't change your life, but all the stories that you're going to make up around it actually would, you know. Oh, so beautiful. Life moves in spirals and not straight lines, just like patterns in nature. Seashell, the ocean, we're part of nature. And we are not taught to understand that this is actually how our lives work too. Oh my gosh, Wen, that's so, so good. That is just beautiful and so true. And yes, I think like having businesses that embrace the spirals, right, and aren't straight lines is one of the most valuable and important things we can do. And like Jess was saying earlier, I think we're so scared to kind of like take from our business. But what I always try to remember is like, I've made so many deposits in this business bank account for so long. And I don't mean that in the actual sense of money. I mean, in terms of my time, my energy, my value, my service, my investment. I have made all the deposits over the years I've been in business. Like my audience knows me, they know I show up. My clients know me, they know I show up. When you take from it, it should be because there's already deposits there, and that will balance itself out. It's just like you build up a savings account and sometimes you take from it because a situation happens, and then like that's there, and then you'll deposit back into it when you can. And like obviously now I'm more back into a season of like I can probably deposit more, but like that was not true for most of this year. Obviously I showed up and served my clients and I did the things, but I'm definitely wasn't like what's the next masterclass I'm doing or any shit like that. Like it was like bare minimum, minus the fact that obviously we launched a second business, but that was sort of a whole different scenario. But like, you get what I mean? Like this, I really needed that ability to take the withdrawals. But it's because I've been making deposits for a while. So I think just to remember that too, like, you're not just taking from something that you never give to, you're taking from something that you have put a lot into over time. And, that's how that's built. It's like having the savings account and then thinking you can never use it when you need to use it for something. Well, like the whole point is that like you built the savings account for this exact situation. So go ahead and use it kind of thing. And like, that's how I felt about this year. Is like, this is why I built it so well. This is why I built such a strong foundation. This is why I made it so sturdy so that when I needed that, it was there for me, like that feels like the important truth. And that's why I'm such a stickler for talking about like simple business foundations, all of that kind of stuff, because that is what sets you up for moments like this. That idea that like you should just make up a piece of content every day and a new program every week and all of that, like it's good when it's good, and it's impossible when you go through a year like I just went through. And obviously, hopefully nobody has that, but like realistically, all of us will have that at different points in our life, right? And so I think it's just important to remember that too, is like, are you building the thing that you could take a withdrawal from? Or, are you building the thing that like is impossible to take a withdrawal from? And I don't say that from a place of like scale and take yourself totally out of it. Like I'm super in my business, my entire model is one-on-one, and I still was able to step away when I needed to. And so just reminding you that like any business model can do this if you have really, really solid foundations. And if you don't, obviously this can be your moment to be like, wait, that's what I want. Like I want those solid foundations more than I need the extra X amount to like prove to people that I'm successful or something. You know what I mean? I think this idea that that's the only metric is just something I want to keep speaking to us getting away from, because that is what, like I was saying earlier, like that's what makes us feel like, okay, I have to do all this stuff, like have the baby, take care of the family, do all the things, and I have to make this much money no matter what, 100% of the time, or someone online is going to think what? Like, do you know what I mean? I feel like if anybody like saw this and was like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe you couldn't figure that out. Like, I would really truly be like, please do not hire me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that is not who I would want as a client, is somebody that was like grossly disappointed with the fact that I didn't make $1 million this year. Like, we would not be an aligned fit anyway. So remember that too. Like, not only like what feels good to you, but what is the actual message that you want to be attracting people with? Do you know what I mean? Like, do you want people that are like, I only think you're successful if it looks like this? Like, this is kind of a whole other side tangent, but why not? Today's about me, right? I feel like that is why I have for so long shied away from like kind of making myself this like, I feel like I make my business about like my clients and like value and things, and I have shied more away from making it like about me and do this and what I do. Like, I feel like I could create some bomb ass content like that, you know what I mean? But like, I always kind of shy away from that because I feel like I don't want to have it all together and perfect. Like, I want to be able to go through a year like I went through and be okay with that and not feel like my success has any bearing, like, or my life or what's going on has any bearing on the amount of success that I can or can't create. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't have to be showing up in a certain way to be successful. And I'm not saying every person that puts themselves at the center of their brand has to. I think, again, it's just also not personality really aligned for me. But that is just something I think we have to think about, is like, when we put ourselves on such a pedestal sometimes, then like, yes, it does feel scarier to fall. When we see ourselves as a human, then it doesn't feel that scary. Like, I always am like, I'm just a human doing human things. And so when life happened last year, I wasn't like, oh my God, nobody's going to think I'm awesome or successful or whatever. I'm like, yep, still a human, having a harder human year, but like still just a human. You know what I mean? Yeah, Jess, exactly. It's like your success card is taken away if your income dips. I think that that's like laughable when we say it like that. And that vibe is totally present. And I think we just have to like kind of like open our eyes and like take away the veil there a little bit and be like, this is not real. And this does not have to be a thing I subscribe to or buy into, you know? Thank you, Manisha. It's good to see you. Yeah. So that's kind of like what I had to say about that. I mean, I think that I could probably like blab on forever about this, but yeah, it just feels like this is a bigger announcement than making the million. This is more important than anything else I could share around that, because this is real and this is life. And also, this is sustainable business, you know, like the fact that we were able to do all of that and still be sustainable, I think is so important. And like, I feel like, do I even want to go here? Uh, I feel like there are all these conversations about like energetic minimums and like never falling below something and da da da. And like, something I would just want to like say about that without like getting too far down that rabbit hole is like, yes, I do think there is something where like once you're used to making a certain amount, it becomes normalized in your brain, all of those things. And I think the idea that like you don't have a good energetic minimum or have somehow fucked up or whatever, if that ever goes down, is just not business to me. Like, I find that very hard to get on board with. Do I believe that there's something to that and that there is like some normalcy there? Yes, I think I have certain energetic minimums for sure in my business, like absolutely. And I'm willing to go outside of those if and when it's important. It's just like when I decided to take the time off and whatever, like, I think as much as yes, that's a real thing. Being able to make a decision outside of that and not feeling like you can't because you're supposed to maintain this minimum is also crazy making. So like, I just wanted to say that part too. Jess. Oh, Lisa said, I'm looking forward to going back to this because I just came in. Oh, thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. Another title for you, my income dipped 300K and my life didn't change. Well, yes, that is actually another good title, because I think that that's probably not how a lot of people would feel. And I don't mean that in a way of like a lot of people like wouldn't feel that way because they're not making that much. I mean, people that are making that much probably wouldn't feel that way because there's such a pressure to prove and keep up and show and spend and whatever. If anybody watched that, did anybody watch Lula Rich on Amazon? I feel like I've talked about that on here before. It's on Amazon Prime. Yeah, it's on Amazon Prime. It's called Lula Rich. And it was basically about like the LuLaRoe MLM business and everything that kind of like transpired there. And what's so interesting is they talk about on it how like the people were making a lot of money, but they would get pressured to kind of like spend all of it and show it and all of this kind of stuff. And so that when all of it imploded, even though there were so many people making so much money, most of them walked away with like nothing because they had spent all of it, because that was sort of like the norm that you were supposed to do in that company. And anyway, I do think that's sort of the norm online a little bit too. So like, you know, that's a whole other conversation, is like, again, are we just like making it to show it, to prove it, to whatever? Are we making it because, you know, like it actually supports our life or the people's lives who we want it to help? So that's an important piece of it too, is like, how can we build businesses that like, yes, make us great income and allow us to enjoy life in a really beautiful way. But again, that we're not so locked into like showing it that like a small dip in, or small or big dip in income wouldn't significantly impact things. You know, like for me, that's really important. Like I've really tried to run my business in a way where like that wouldn't impact us. And obviously like I'm living the life, don't get me wrong. Like we moved into our dream house, like I said, but I think I definitely am living it differently. And I don't think that's better or worse, but I do think like not feeling the pressure to keep up is a huge gift that I've given myself in business. And I just hope it's something I can like remind other people to give themselves as well. You don't have to show it. You don't have to whatever, unless you want to. Like if that's super fun for you, by all means, whatever. You know what I mean? There's nothing like inherently wrong with that. But I think that it's just important to say like that's not a requirement for success either. So that is my spiel. We didn't do it this year. I feel amazing about that. I feel like that's something I will forever be so proud of, is that we did it last year. And something I will forever be so proud of is that I was willing to not chase it to the ends of the earth this year. You know, could I have made that 300K up? 1000 fucking percent. Could I have taken less maternity leave? 1000%. Could I have put out other offers? Absolutely. Could we have gone over 1 million or gotten close? Absolutely. If I was willing to do all of that last year, if I was willing to, like I said, chase it to the ends of the earth, do whatever it takes, I absolutely was not. And so permission if you're not either. And that doesn't mean you suck or you're bad. It means you're making choices in alignment with you and your values, and nobody else online gets to fucking comment on that, you know? Obviously I'm inviting comments right now, but you get what I'm saying. Like this idea that like Jess said your success card would be taken or something, like that does not have to be, or does not get to be real. So that is my soapbox for today. Remember, if you watched, which I am very thankful if you did for coming to my TED Talk today. I'm kidding. You're entered to win a $200 gift card as our thank you. I just really appreciate you guys. I appreciate you being witness to this conversation. I appreciate you being here regardless. I appreciate you seeing through all the layers of this that comes up in our space and in our industry. And I just I'm so grateful to you. So that is that. I will be back next week. Will I? Yes. I'm like so confused on how close we are to Christmas. Sometimes it feels so far, and then sometimes I'm like, oh, it's probably Thursday. But I will be back next week. I have so much more that I want to share with you guys this month. I know last week was where we introduced Dateable, and so this was kind of like a diversion from that. But I have so much more I want to say about that at some point this year as well. I will do that. If you guys have questions about that, obviously you can reach out to me personally. I know a lot of you have, which I really am so excited about and appreciate. And so, yeah, we will see you guys next week. And I appreciate y'all. Bye, guys.